Hello, I am Dr. LaDonna Osborne, and we are continuing the Daisy Washburn Osborne 100 Years of Life, Ministry, Influence. This is exciting to me. If you remember last year, 2023, we took the 100-year mile marker from my father's birth to tell his story throughout the year and highlight decisions and encounters and things that would really help us. And I told you throughout the year, wait till next year, I'm going to tell some of my mother's story. So here we are, and we have begun. And we've told many things of her early years, her coming into an environment where she found Jesus, and the attitudes of her life that really are commendable, that carried through her entire life. That was the mother I've described to you and am describing is the woman who raised me, who was the leader of our organization and who changed the world along with my father. So you'll hear more about that as we go along. But by the time my mother was a teenager, 16 years old, she's living in California. She's committed to the Lord. She didn't date. She wasn't interested in boys. She was totally sold out to serve the Lord and do whatever he desired. Now, that was the girl that my father met. You'll remember a bit of his story. He was taken off of the farm by an Ernest Dillard, an evangelist, who asked if my father could travel with him because my father was also a musician. And so Brother Dillard thought, this boy can play the piano. So at the age of 15, my father was taken off the farm and he traveled with Brother Dillard then for 3 years. And it was that allowed my father to leave Oklahoma right in the middle of the United States and travel all the way to California. Now, this is in the early 40s. So you see, travel was not that easy going across the desert in the United States to California, but this was the way it happened. Of course, I see God's hand in all of this. When at the time it seems impossible, you look at this old jalopy car and this evangelist and this kid going along in the dust and going to little churches, conducting revivals, just serving the Lord and bringing people to Jesus. So it was at that season. My father was 17 years old and my mother was 16. And there was a youth revival that my mother and the young people from her church were attending. So they went, and it happened that my mother was sitting on the front row, and the evangelist was Brother Dillard. And the young man on the piano was Tommy Lee Osborne. And I don't know what happened in her at the time, but from his point of view, he said as soon as he saw her, he fell in love. So here you have these two young people, 16 and 17, both from very impoverished backgrounds, and her from a lot of pain and loss in her life. She was clinging to Jesus for just the healing for day-to-day decisions that she needed. So here they were at this youth rally, and the story goes that after the service, he talked to her, and they spent quite a little time visiting. The next night, as everyone was leaving, they were over in the balcony and they were visiting. And it was at that time, the second time they were together, that my father asked her to marry him. And she said yes. So here you have the beginning of a courtship between these two people that are going to end up impacting their world in amazing ways. So what I'm wanting to show you that God has a way of working with individuals through their life circumstances. You see, my father never would have been allowed to leave the farm because, you need all the boys, all the muscle that you have in a family to run a farm. But my father had been kicked by a mule in the side, and that had weakened him. And so I think my grandfather thought, well, he can't help much on the farm, let him go. Let one less mouth to feed. You know, the mentality of really poor people. But look how God used those seemingly negative circumstances to bring my father and my mother together. Now, the thing in my mother at this time that I want to impress upon you is she made her decision to marry. She made every decision at that stage in her life out of her consecration to serve the Lord. She loved Jesus. She loved Jesus. She saw in my father something that she hadn't seen in other young men, and she liked that. So you see, her decision was based on the right thing. Now, it happens that for the next 9 months, they were only able to court via correspondence. So they were sharing letters, and for 9 months, that was their way of courtship. And at the end of that time, April the 5th, 1942, on Easter Sunday, my mother and father were married. Neither of their families, no one showed up. My mother had a borrowed dress. My father borrowed something to wear, and they began their lives together, 17 and 18 years old, with who would have looked at this couple on that day and thought they had anything to offer the kingdom of God? You see, these are things that when you look back, you can dwell on and be amazed at the grace of God and the plan of God that allows the most impossible people to become greatly useful in his kingdom. That's what I enjoy reflecting on in the story of my mother and my father, because neither of them had anything to offer in the natural. And yet with God's empowerment, his plan being allowed to unfold in their lives, you see great things can happen. So I just impress on you in this episode, believe God for each step that you take when it looks impossible, when it looks pitiful, when it looks like no one cares or knows about you. God knows, and he's guiding your step. Let's be those kind of people around others who encourage them on their journey. God bless you. I'll see you at the next episode.